Good morning, everybody. We are in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania today at the Home Delivery World Conference. So this is my first time doing Meet Me for Coffee live in, let's call it in the wild, actually on the road with an in-person guest. I'm kind of like not sure where I should be looking right now because I've always been looking at my screen. But we're excited to see everybody here today out at this conference. We both have a lot of sessions we're going to attend. We're both speaking. And so there's just a lot that's going on that we're going to be excited to be learning and taking in and connecting. So if you are watching this and you're at the conference, now you see what we're wearing today. So like flag us down if you see us, say hi. But I have Jordan with me from Bad Birdie Golf, and we're excited to talk to him a little bit today. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Him and I have been chatting. He has a pretty cool background, so I'm going to let him share that with you guys a little bit. Thanks for joining.
No, thanks so much for having me. This is a lot of fun. My first time at Home Delivery World, so really pumped to check out the conference, and really pumped to do this discussion as well. I started my career in supply chain about 11, 12 years ago, initially in procurement in the automotive space. I was a buyer for CarMax for a couple of years, but sort of ended up getting poached by Uber at the time in 2016 when they were starting an auto finance sort of car subscription vertical.
Okay.
So that's what led me into the logistics and supply chain space.
Yeah.
I also sort of got the startup bug at that point, just the feeling of scaling something in real time, just being really empowered to be autonomous and build. So went from there to Kraft Heinz in the CPG space, was there for a short about a year and a half, but really felt the desire to go back to the startup space. So it was back with an earlier stage startup that called Wander Jaunt. And since then I've worked mostly in fast growth startups that are scaling supply chain orgs, growing fast and need to get sort of some infrastructure down. Been with Bad Birdie for about a year now, about 6 months now, on the way to a year. Just having a lot of fun building out the org.
Awesome. So I know who Bad Birdie is because probably primarily through Instagram, because I have an Instagram, and because I've become a novice golfer lately. So I've been looking at golf apparel and things. But can you kind of explain to us how Bad Birdie started, who Bad Birdie is, and the type of products and space you're dealing in?
Absolutely. Bad Birdie is a sort of golf apparel brand that was really started by our founder, Jason, to kind of break like the stuffy stigma of golf.
Yeah.
That sort of, it's for old guys that go to the country club, smoke stogies, and you wear Ralph Lauren.
Yep.
Our founder basically had the idea to have a brand that was all around like sort of bright prints like this, and sort of more irreverent, sort of more casual, for the younger generation of golfers that doesn't really care as much about the etiquette or the technicality of the game as much as having fun being with friends.
Yeah.
So the idea was really to sort of start something for himself first. He additionally went to the garment district where he was working as a line producer in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Had like a few days off, had this sort of idea to make his own polos, found a lady who could sew them for him. So he made like a batch of 100 for him and his friends, ended up selling a few online. And then that sort of just kept slowly growing. He'd make a new batch. Couple months later, sell more. Eventually got on Shark Tank. He was offered a deal, but he actually sort of went through the process, decided I'd rather bootstrap this myself, keep it going. So it's another really interesting thing about the brand is fully bootstrapped, owner held, founder held, and so growing now more into also a women's line, and also just sort of more general lifestyle apparel. So not just something you wear to the golf course, but you can wear it to the range and to the grocery store afterwards, out with friends, whatever it may be.
Okay, so quick recap. How old is Bad Birdie then? Like, when was it originally?
Bad Birdie just turned 6 this year. And it's really sort of grown over the last 3 years more into a fully omni-channel brand. So really sort of in the retail space more the last 3 years. Before that, more sort of online shopping.
So started as like an e-com Instagram brand idea, and now you guys, I just was at Golf Galaxy, I saw your stuff there. You guys are in like Macy's, Dillard's, some big retailers. Okay, so you have an interesting background because you come from larger companies, you come from smaller companies, and that like more startup style, which sounds like it's kind of more your pace, kind of the adventure of starting something new. But talk to me specifically. What I wanted to spend some time talking today is about, we hear a lot from like founders about, their general startup stories and like the experiences they went through and growth. I don't think a whole lot of people always talk about like the supply chain side of that fast growth track when you get on it. So just in general, like talk to me a little bit about that journey as you guys have you've seen the supply chain growing pretty rapidly, even just since you've come on a lot more into the retail space and things like that. So how important is, I mean, I would imagine just like general adaptability and agility in your supply chain as a startup.
It's really important. And, really there's a few different factors being a small team, being a small startup. The first one is just obviously you're wearing a lot of hats. Yeah. So there's a lot of work to be done, and you really have to work and strategize on a number of levels. So there's sort of like the immediate, like what's happening now. Obviously, when you're a startup, a lot of times you have fewer resources, not just people, but also capital. Yeah. And a company like Bad Birdie being fully bootstrapped, right, really every dollar is critical. Yeah. So you're really you're sort of doing a combination of like duct taping and blueprinting at the same time, where it's like, how can we absolutely how can we stretch our personal capacity to the absolute max, where every person is doing 20% more than they think they can do, and keep things running, whether it's a systems or processes. How long can we leverage Google Sheets as opposed to like buying a TMS or an ERP? And how do we get the timing right so that when we're using these sort of duct tape together tools now, that we're still executing, but planning for that spot in the future where we'll need to graduate to the next thing, but at the right price, at the right time. Yeah. So it's a lot of sort of layered thinking and strategizing. But more than anything, just having the mentality of we'll figure it out and get it done no matter what it takes. And just being ready for anything really on a day-to-day basis. And it's just I think it's a lot of fun. I think having worked in both larger companies that are less agile, where, when I was at Kraft Heinz, it was this incredible experience that I got to manage like a $500 million budget every year and work on these huge projects. But the stuff that I started, like literally didn't come to fruition until years after I left the company. Right. I would get a call from a business dev guy saying, hey, that deal that we started in 2017, we finally closed it in 2020. Like, thanks so much for the work on that. So it's just a different feeling. And so I think with
lot faster pace probably. Yeah. And even when you're talking about like these timelines and forecasting and like implementation, I mean, things just have to move a lot faster probably. Yeah. And especially for you guys, I mean, like, because your brand is growing so significantly, so quickly. We're not talking about like, from, year 2 to year 4, we took our time and kind of like progressed. It's like, you have to follow the revenue, you have to follow the demand, right? That you guys are getting this engagement from this customer base. And so the demand is increasing. Yeah. And it's like feeling the pressure to meet that from a supply chain side of things.
Exactly. There's the whole element of we have to capture this demand while it's there, because we're a small brand. Yeah. Every single time I go to a Macy's, there's like 1 or 2 other brands that are now doing the exact same thing we are. Right. So you have to continually move and innovate, to capture that demand, but also you have to make sure that you don't throw yourself out of business, because you can grow fast. This happened a lot during the pandemic, where people assume that this growth that was pulled forward was the new baseline. And so you start spending more, or you go buy that new ERP to serve these customers, but they're gone in 3 months, and now you have this fat monthly SaaS bill that you can't pay. Yes. So like that. So really every single part of the puzzle you're putting together, you have to be really, really conscious and think in 1 month, 1 year, 3 year sort of. I
love that call out on the pandemic, because we obviously know already that like the consumer goods spending that the pandemic fueled, that like that stimulus time pandemic fueled, and just like staying home, e-com exploded. And a lot of companies, and even in the logistics space, like the space that we operate in, as the providers, a lot of people expanded really rapidly to meet that, but it was never going to be fully sustainable levels. Exactly. Like, there's going to still be some like year-over-year gain, right? But people expanded faster than what was going to be sustained. Yeah. And so now we're seeing like that's really probably hitting balance sheets, hitting budgets now. Yeah. So it's kind of like that very intentional planning and budgeting to make sure that what you're doing is going to be sustainable, not just in the short term for like an immediate need, but like long term. Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. So, okay, you guys started in e-com, which means you guys started a lot in the parcel side of things, doing a lot of just shipping parcel orders directly to your customers, but you're getting more and more into the retail space, into some unique opportunities, which is going to start opening you guys up slowly more and more to different modes of shipping. So what does that look like for you guys as you start to plan and strategize around shifting from the mode that you guys have known since conception to now an additional type of transportation mode? Yeah,
absolutely. So really right now we're in this period where we're close to like the break point where we would go from, like, for example, we have our sort of 7 or 8 really big box retail accounts that for the most part we're shipping on their accounts. They have their own TMS that we route through. Then we have this middle bucket of 800 plus green grass customers that are ordering 8 to 50 units at a time, all across the country, and then our own branded retail channel. We have a retail store in Scottsdale, one in Lido Beach in California, and one opening in Houston. And you're sort of looking at the growth across these channels, trying to sort of predict in your head at what point they'll hit certain thresholds that would then necessitate or really sort of validate the move to different modes, but doing it at a point where obviously if you're resource constrained and you're trying to sort of absorb more functionality from just having like a FedEx or UPS do LTL shipments to green grass or retail, where's the point where the cost benefit to us is worth the additional time to manage or the number of things that could go wrong. And there's sort of a mode that you can get in as a startup where if you can leverage a partner to sort of absorb more of the work, you get into a comfort zone. So with right now with our green grass accounts, pretty much ship everything with FedEx or UPS, but really close to that level where between that and our retail network, we probably leverage direct LTL partnerships. It sort of goes back to that sort of strategizing and working on multiple levels where we're utilizing what's worked to this point to make sure that we're executing on the demand we have, to not lose customers at this really vital stage where other people are trying to find it in the space, that we're keeping our end customer happy. That's number one. So if we're going to pay a bit more to keep that customer happy, until we're absolutely certain we can shift to something else and execute, we'll keep doing that. But we're planning on, I've already started the process of talking to LTL partners in the last few weeks when we're probably not even looking at fully shifting over to that sort of strategy until end of this year, maybe early next year. So it's really trying to get the tracks of what you're going to run on later as solidified as you can, and also just really find the right partners to both work with you now when you're growing and you're learning things, but be with you on the ride, and honestly kind of find the right partners who can slingshot you forward as a company.
So how did that go, if you don't mind me asking? Like, do you have it? And I don't need to know about the partner specifically, but like, did you guys have to go through that experience where when you started and you were smaller, you had a partner, and then you had to make that tough call, like, hey, we might be outgrowing this partnership? Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's happened on the 3PL and fulfillment side, which is really sort of like the first big boulder that I came in to sort of help move was, how do we make sure our fulfillment strategy is growing from the same partner we had when we were selling a couple hundred units a month through Instagram and Shopify. Now we're doing thousands of orders a month across multiple channels. Your DNA as a company changes, and sometimes your partners stay the same. So if they were completely D2C centric and now we have like a 60-40 split wholesale D2C, are we growing in the same place? Are we growing at the same rate? And so that sort of goes into really partner selection at the small scale. For me in the past, working at other companies of like earlier and sort of similar size, it's about finding partners who share some sort of DNA. And honestly, there's a bit of like selling to them. It's a bit of going to partners where we think, hey, you've been where we haven't been yet. We're probably not big enough to justify your interest as a partner now. Like your center of gravity as a small company, your center of gravity as a trade partner is so different as opposed to working at a Kraft Heinz where I can say, hey, I'm spending $40 million a year across our network with you. So like now do like this for us too.
You tell them. I think that's a topic that like, honestly, it shouldn't have to change as you grow. Like even these larger companies, if you can keep that mentality where it's like, hey, continually sell yourself to these other people. So
it really does have to be symbiotic. It has to be the kind of thing where you especially in logistics.
Excuse me, do you have an interest in this piece?
Hi guys. We're sitting right in the middle of a lot of things, guys. We're trying to find our way around. Okay. Sorry, I'll get back where we were. So as you're growing, you're trying to continually take your data, and even as a large company, we've talked about this before, I've spoken about this topic, and it's like, hey, sell yourself to your partners, because even when you're larger company, you can still do more to make yourself more attractive to those providers. But as a small company, like really focusing in on like, hey, here's where I'm at now, but like here's where we're gonna go. Like, do you want to come with us? Can
100%.
this be a partnership where we like future state, or we like current state, but we also like where future state looks like as
100%.
a mutual partnership?
100%. If you don't, especially if you're a fast-growing company, you're going to continually churn partners. You're going to grow out of that partner, or vice versa. I see it a lot in like the logistics space, where logistics tech companies or sort of tech-enabled 3PLs took on money over the last couple of years and now have to grow really fast and get less discriminate with the partners who are the right profile for their business. You're continually churning customers, churning partners, which costs money and time. So it's really finding people that you can grow with together, and have some sort of common incentivization at the end of the rainbow together. That's going to keep you aligned, working through all the difficulty.
Yeah. I like it. I think that's awesome. Okay, so we are in Philadelphia at Home Delivery World, and I wanted to go ahead and take some time here at the end to ask you about what it is like a shipper like you, and a startup company like you. There's a lot of smaller e-com brands here, or B2C brands here, right? Because this is Home Delivery World. What are some of the things that you're coming here hoping to engage in, hoping to find answers to? What type of benefit do you get out of coming to engage in these types of events?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is this is really part of that process of, for me, being with a smaller brand, that layered thinking, the higher layer of like looking out towards the future. So there might be people that I meet here, or solutions that I see for the first time here, that don't make sense for us until 2024, 2025. But it's being able to sort of like mentally map either new capabilities in the industry as a whole that we'd be able to leverage, and then keeping an eye on which players are going to emerge in the right time. I think it's like a super exciting time in logistics tech, because we've had so much sort of venture capital going into the space the last couple of years, that there's sort of more solutions available than ever. I think there's a lot of probably solutions looking for problems more than problems that now have solutions in the last couple of years. That's not a negative.
That is I haven't heard something more true in quite a while.
But I think these are the types of experiences where you can really sort of like separate the wheat from the chaff and see what's going to be like the really beneficial stuff out there that's going to help us get to the next level. And I think that there's also so many tools for smaller companies like us, where we don't necessarily have the same levers or the number of levers that a bigger company has, but there's new partners and tools that help us better manage those few levers we have. So if you're constrained from like a carrier base with parcel because you're with a smaller 3PL and you're shipping off of their accounts, well, like, what are the solutions that now exist to at least better understand and manage your parcel spend from the customer side, to be able to just better predict your business, or just get a better handle around what you're doing, so you're not sort of like just at the mercy of the wind. You're able to really take control of your brand and your logistics. So I think that, and then also just be able to meet a lot of people that, like, especially the last couple of years, less traveling, less in-person meetings, people that you meet on Twitter or whatever, maybe LinkedIn. It's awesome to just finally meet people in person. And logistics is such a relationship-heavy space, and I think it will continue to be regardless of AI or automation, whatever it is. And so these opportunities are really vital to just meet people in the space who are working 363 days out of the year. So this is going to maybe one of the only times that you really get face-to-face.
I love it. I love that. And just kind of trying to educate ourselves, right, and know what's out there, know what's available. Keeping an eye on people, right? Like, wouldn't you say that you're planning for the future? So when you come to these events, you're looking to see who else is out here. What are you doing? What are you working on? How is that going to develop? Maybe it's not a fit for me now, but maybe it's a fit in 6 months. Maybe it's a fit in a year. So kind of keeping that long-term strategy. And I think that hopefully that's why a lot of us are engaging in events like this too, is to kind of keep up with what's going on, make sure we're staying educated, make sure we're staying ahead of that. Okay, well, I also wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of share your thoughts on just we have a lot of younger people entering into supply chain. We have a lot of startups that are really exploding like that, Bertie. And as we do that, I think one of the really cool things is that you're seeing people with less experience or just younger in general getting into the space and all of a sudden being in positions like in these startups where it's supply chain can either make or break you, and they're recognizing that and they're trying their best. So what is your advice to any companies, maybe not even just startups, but let's talk about like companies who they're hitting that break point. They're trying to decide, like, there's a lot of growth going on, trying to decide between expanding or adding people to the team, or like, what are we doing? So just general advice right now to maybe, let's do two parts. Someone who's entering the industry for the first time, and then someone who's kind of at a company where your team is facing that next level of like okay, now what?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for anybody starting out in the space, I think you're right. There's so many more shippers out there. There's so many, whether it's D2C native brands or there's so many more seats in terms of we need a logistics manager, we need a logistics person. So I think it's a great space if you want to get in somewhere and learn, get experience, and actually be in like a functional, highly used, highly leveraged spot. It's a great space to do that, and also just see every other part of the business. Like what you do in logistics and supply chain is fully incumbent upon understanding what sales and marketing is doing, what every part of your business is doing, so that you really get almost like a mini MBA just through osmosis the longer you're in one of those kinds of roles. And I think the biggest thing for starting out your career is just go somewhere where you're going to be leveraged and you're going to learn, but chase as much responsibility early on as you can.
I like that. Chase responsibility.
Whatever you think your capacity is, try to do 20% more, 30% more. And as you sort of grow in your career, look for those opportunities that represent concentric circles outward in terms of each step you take, each new role, more responsibility, and some new aspect that you didn't do in the last role that's sort of growing your scope. I think from a company standpoint, the best thing you can really do is empower your logistics team, and inside those logistics teams, if you have more than one person, within a company, a lot of times you're sort of like a lone wolf as a supply chain guy in a startup. So as soon as you have that second or third person, I think the biggest thing is just really supporting each other. There's a lot of sort of there can be a lot of tension as startups grow, because you're looking at every dollar. You're looking at every customer handoff, that product to the customer. And unfortunately, supply chain is kind of the first and last domino in a lot of those equations. So you're going to get a lot of heat, but you're also going to get the opportunity to fix a lot of problems at the last minute. So I would say, for those teams, I think it's just whatever asks you get, as outlandish as they seem, always try to say yes.
Say yes.
Stuff out. The biggest growth experiences I've ever had have been just trying to do impossible stuff. Maybe you get 90% of the way there, but that builds buy-in with your team, which gives you more opportunities to deliver. Which at some point, the sort of I think the default mode for so many older organizations is to say, well, we can only do X because that's what we've always done. So if you can be a younger person in a younger company saying that we're going to try to do something that hasn't been done, that only means good things for your company, for your career, and you learn a ton. So support each other and just chase what scares you.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Guys, I think Bad Birdie's supply chain is in really good hands here today. We have some comments, but we're kind of sitting farther away. Let me see here. Long-term strategy is key. You really there we go. You really get lucky with a good customer giving you a chance. When you are kind of bad shipper, it takes everybody on the first call. Yep, absolutely. Tony, strategic partners that are transparent, sharing goals and solutions to drive a mutual benefit, important for large and small companies. Yeah, Tony's from Scott's Miracle Grow. He's been on the podcast before, so he just talked about that. Actually, we were at a conference, which was really interesting. It was a sales and marketing conference for transportation professionals, and he was speaking to how shippers want to be approached and how they want to be partnered with by their providers. And so even in a publicly traded organization like that, that's what instantly clicked when you were talking about that. It's still the same mentality for these larger companies. We heard that on a panel that they're still saying the same things. These medium-sized companies, these enterprise-sized companies, they're all still saying the same thing. It's like, show us what you can do for us now, but also help us strategize for what's next. Because I don't think there's anybody in the supply chain space, especially on the shipper side, that's been tasked with just maintaining for the next 5 to 10 years, right? Like everybody's trying to accomplish improvements, continual process improvements, continual savings, staying in line with the market, reading the market, staying up to date on the newest solutions and offerings. And so making sure that, for anybody who's listening, who's maybe like a provider, I don't know what they do. TMS, technology warehouse, shipping. What's something that you would say, this is me coming off of a transportation sales and marketing event, right? There was a lot of questions around what is it that you guys are looking to hear from people? And if someone was to approach you, kind of right now with the phase you guys are in, what is that effective way to be trying to communicate value to somebody?
Yeah, I think honestly, the biggest thing we can do, especially in a down market where a lot of people are looking for new customers, a lot of people have their value proposition that they have in their traditional cold email. The biggest thing is ask the customer you're approaching what they need.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people who typically offer like this full service solution to offer a part of it to the right customer who then grows into the full solution. Really seek to be sort of as customer first as you can. It's sort of an oxymoron because that sort of should always be the goal. But I think there's going to be a need for more sort of ad hoc and sort of like bespoke partnerships that grow into something more traditional as things normalize over time. So I think really just try to be as other-centered as possible, and that transparency of, as a shipper that's growing and we don't have this huge history of volumes that we can forecast upon. Like, I'm going to be transparent with you and let you know when, hey, we missed this month's forecast, but here's where we think it is now. Like transparency both ways really helps, so that you're not burning your partners and building up this sort of like backlog of tension and frustration that ends up becoming like passive aggression and all that stuff. So be as bluntly honest as possible when you miss as a shipper, and the same from the service providers.
Yeah, awesome. I don't know how, but we're already almost at time. So we've got some transitions that are about to happen here in the conference, and I think it's about to get loud. So we're going to have to be hopping off before that happens to let you guys go. But thank you so much to everyone who dropped in. Jordan, can they connect with you on LinkedIn? Is that a good platform to send you something?
LinkedIn is great.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, if you wanted to leave any comments, if you're listening to this back after the fact or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just come back to this post on LinkedIn. Jordan's happy to engage, answer some questions. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, your comments, and we look forward to running into anybody here at the conference. If you're at Home Delivery World, we'll see you guys soon. And he said, looking fresh. Where did you get that shirt?
This company making golf stuff, and my wife was able to tune in from Phoenix at 7:30.
Awesome.
So
That's awesome. Yes, and she's probably like, finally, you guys are making women's a line
now.
She's
very excited. We got some of the first line in. So
there we go. Well, thank you so much to everybody who listened in, and we appreciate you guys taking some time, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for meeting us for coffee.